We are going to talk about language production, what it entails in all the areas that are included in the language production that are not mainly language. We are going to talk about some language evolution and how it is built. We are going to, as I told you, go into the main focus of sound articulation and the stages of language development, and we are going to see some activities for you to help your kids at home or at your therapy or in your class. Okay, so language production, it's mainly or very closely related to one person's cognitive development. Because for language development, you need to have a good memory, good attention, planning and problem solving, not from the beginning, but throughout the language development. You need all those other cognitive skills to be able to develop it. So as the child grows and develops these cognitive abilities, the language production gets better, more complex, and sophisticated. The second area that involves language production has to do with the linguistic knowledge that the person has or acquires in his environment or from his environment, which when we talk about linguistic knowledge, we talk about vocabulary, grammar, phonetic rules, and social rules that allows the person to know how to use every part of the language. As a third aspect, we have language processing. This means that, and this is very important, and sometimes it's not given its weight, because for language processing, you need a certain speed in production and also in the processing of the linguistic information you are receiving. Because this processing of the information allows you to understand and produce sounds, combination of sounds, words, and all the grammatical structures, even when it's two words, and all the combination of all the previous one, because when you make longer sentences, you also have to, apart from knowing the syntactic structure of the sentence, you need to combine all the sounds all together, as you see me doing now, for example, which is quite challenging for me, not being a non-native English speaker. So maybe that's why I can see the weight of this into the language production. So in terms of the evolution of the production of language, it is influenced by, for example, biological factors, which is last in the series. It is debated, but there are some theories that propose that humans are biologically determined for language production. So there would be, and it's not known or not, there is not like a consensus among the theorists on how broader that or how specific that knowledge is. But we know, for example, that there are areas on the brain, mainly the Broca's area and the Wernicke areas, where where language or language production and comprehension is located mainly. Then the other aspect that is also included is socialization. Because language is very much developed through social interactions between humans. We observe and imitate other people's language and production, and in every interaction. So that socialization plays a fundamental role in the development and the production of language. So I don't want to be very, I don't want to go on speaking about this, but there are two main theories about the evolution of language production or language development. One is gestural, where, according to them, communication and gestures are the seeds for language development. For example, gestures and facial expressions communicate or help communicate internal states or external situations, and over time they become more symbolic, and they are, in that sense, the seed of the spoken language development. On the other hand, there is the syntactic theory, where the focus is made on grammatical structure, syntaxes, also in the evolution of language. And according to them, we learn the ability to combine words and sentences in a structure in a more systematical way than the previous theory. So they say that we humans, and also throughout history, we express a variety of complex meaning and communicate more efficiently through this symbolic means, which are words and phrases, and through those and through its very use and ability and possibilities of communication allow us to develop language till the point we have. From the VICON method, we believe that well, if you know the method, you must have noticed that there are some aspects of each theory contained in the videos. Also, because basing our method because we started as an ASD language development method. So thinking of that, the communicational aspect and the cognitive aspects are very highlighted, especially at the beginning in the method, leading to a more structured and syntactic method until the end. So we are sort of conceptually a mixture of both ideas. So now we are going to get into the, as I told you, more of the sound area of the talk, because we are going to make more emphasis on that today. We have in the previous or in the past webinar spoke about other more playful aspects of language development, but today we are going to focus on this. So when we work on sounds and sound production, what we are after is an array of things. For example, we want to increase the number and complexities of the sounds we find, and we want to make a clearer or a more intelligently speech. I don't know if I said that word right. But for that, you need sort of some steps. Then, even though we took them from professionals, I think that for everybody are really, really helpful to know. So the first thing is that because as parents or as teachers, not for professionals, because professionals know how to be a therapist, but parents and teachers have to become co-therapists. So for those in those arrays, they have to know like the steps just to make the most out of the method. So the first thing is to make like not a professional, because I assume that most kids or have a professional behind, but for because you know that we try to be like an asset between sessions, for example, for professionals. So between sessions, the one that is a co-therapist needs to make an initial evaluation of the sound situation, for example. Because and this helps in many ways. For example, the first important thing it tells you where you begin. In that sense, you don't go like, for example, oh, I want him to learn that. You start where you are. I don't know if I'm being clear enough, but sometimes expectations are not really helpful for development, and this initial evaluation really helps to establish like a ground point where you start working. So when this initial evaluation, you just observe the amount of sounds and combination of sounds your kid has as a beginning, and the way he uses that. So those are two very important informations to start with. Then you try and set realistic, and I am going to go through, and I'm not going to be very, I'm not going to expand a lot about this because you are going to receive a PDF, but we are going to go through some of the main areas of sound development so that you have like a clearer and realistic objectives to develop. But in general terms, we could say that what you want to, at the beginning, do is to expand what your child has. For example, if it has no language, your first objective is the production of any sound. And this goes on from there, like if he has some sounds, what you want him to do is to have more sounds, different sounds. And then you move to different combination of sounds, maybe. Okay? So it's not, because it's not, knowing some things about development truly helps. Not to, for example, if he doesn't speak, maybe wanting to jump or expecting to jump to words or some things like that. Because, and in that sense, with ASD kids, it can be a little bit difficult when they have like echolalic dialogues or productions, because you see them being able to produce all those sounds very articulated, but then they don't spontaneously communicate anything with, or at least at the beginning, with some grounded link. In that sense, for example, what they produce is not linked to what is being said, or something in the context that you are able to connect, at least at the beginning. So in those cases, what this means is that the child is able and is willing also, because echolalic production has to do with the, I don't want to say will, because it's not really it's, because with will, it looks like it's conscious, but what there is like a drive to speak and to communicate, but it's not actually meaningful at the beginning. So you see that the possibility of complex and well-formed production is there, but there is no link to the speaker with the communicational aspect of language, which is, for example, knowing that you speak about you and your own experience, and you talk about the other people's experience, right? So with the production of sounds, what we are going to discuss in a few slides about the different moments or steps in the sound development is going to help you to have like a more grounded expectations. Hi, Carol. Welcome. Hi, Joan.
Hi, thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the slides, and I don't see you going in. So I'm sorry if I don't welcome you, but it's my wish to welcome you all. So that's for the objectives. And if you have any questions, we are going to have a Q&A at the end. Okay, so hopefully, but if it is very important at any point, you can interrupt me, okay? In case you think you're going to forget or something. Okay. Another spelling mistake. An A for an S. Sound articulation. Okay. So there are different ways or different means or big strategies, because they are not going to be activities you make, like big strategies you use to teach or to help someone develop a sound articulation. So the first one is modeling. So here in the modeling activities, what you do is you produce a sound, you produce it slow enough and exaggerated enough so that the child can hear and observe how it is produced properly, And you do it like this because, for example, with ASD kids, you might have like sensory problems where the sensory or the input information comes at different moments. So you need to be very careful and pay attention to your child's characteristics so that this doesn't get in the way, and you do it slowly and coordinated enough. This, if you've seen any of our videos, you must have seen this. Because this is like the mouth zoom actually goes after this. Really isolating the mouth for the child to be able to focus his attention, which is the cognitive capacity that is needed, also with the sound production and the movements of the mouth. So watching, listening, and then if it's able, imitating. So when you do this, you need the child to be a learner, because someone to imitate needs to wants to do what you have done. In this case, it would be you make a sound and you want the child to repeat, to imitate, to do it himself, to try and do what you have done or showed. Then, praxis or oral exercises. In these cases, what you do is you do specific exercises to strengthen the muscles, or, for example, practicing where or how the lips, the tongue, or the palatal area, the whole oral structure is structured in itself for the sound production. For example, and I'm going back again to the videos of the method. If you've seen them, for example, there are lots of them about blowing or making games with the tongue. And those muscles, those exercises or games are meant to strengthen the whole muscle and the placement for the for the good oral production. I'm sorry if I'm saying about something that I'm not doing quite well at the moment. And this is very important. Sometimes it is not given its proper weight, but the articulation of sounds needs very strong muscles and a very precise and a better placement. I'm sorry, the word was not coming to me. Placement of lips and tongue and with the teeth, all the relationship with all the oral area needs to be very precise and strong to make a good and intelligible production. So these are other kind of means for the sound or language production. And finally, the auditory discrimination. This looks like an input thing, but I don't know if you've noticed, but language production is very much linked to the way we are able to discriminate and distinguish different sounds from each other. And to be able to also differentiate a good production from an incorrect production. And you can do this in a very rough mode saying very different words, or you can make it very minimal with only 1 or 2 sounds different, depending on your child's capacities. Another thing that is very, very important for the good sound articulation has to do with having a systematic practice. Designing activities and exercises is very important, but it is as important to do them systematically and intensely enough so that you see results from the stimulation. So as we said, that initial evaluation is very important. Systematic and intense practice is also very important. One of the things, or one of the obstacles we find in language development with children who have difficulties in this area is that there is not enough immersion or intense or systematic stimulation throughout the days to have a big and proper development. And we think that this is where we go in, right? Because all the different areas of stimulation need to be put in place for a child with language development to develop language. And of course, there needs to be positive reinforcement. And this is one of the key things why we need to be able to measure more or less properly our expectations or our perspective of our child's development, because positive reinforcement or feedback gives the child the motivation and the achievement sense that gives him the platform to be able to continue perseverating and improving in his own development. So I said I was going to tell you about some things. You are going to receive proper, but I don't want it to be too long, because we are not going to be able to speak, and so I'm not going to give too much, because you are going to receive the material through an email. So there are some stages for the sound development. Sound development, well, I don't have a slide for that, but sound development has like a receptive moment, which ends at 7 months. That means that between the 6th and the 7th month, children are able to distinguish the sounds from the language in his environment from foreign languages. So this is like the input development of sound. And then the production of sounds, which is what I'm going to talk a little bit now, goes up to the 7th or 8th year of age. Okay, so there is what we call the vowel stage, because children start developing the sounds from the vowels. All the first vocalizations are made at this between the beginning of life, maybe the third month, until the sixth. Okay, and there you see the child making the sounds and the combination of vowels, of all the vowels that he hears, or he or she, of course. So cooing and doing all those productions, and sometimes it goes up to looking like whole conversations. You might have seen babies babbling. No, you've seen that. So they make different sounds and combination of them as a first stage. Then there are 3 different stages for the consonant development. So at the beginning, of course, everybody begins to develop the production of sounds for the easier that everybody has at the beginning. So it's P, B, M, N, T, and D, for example, right? And you must see that at the between the 6th and the 12th month, you see the production or the combination of sounds and consonants in every baby or infant. Then there is like a consonant expansion where children gradually start to produce more difficult consonants, like, for example, the S or the Z, well, and some others. But at this point, between, because this goes from the first year to the third, right? Speech is expected to be unclear, and this is very important, mainly by the adults who don't know the child, but the ones around and listening to the child very much, understand what that sound production means, even though it's not that clear at this point. And in the last stage, the most difficult sounds like r, sh, ch, z appear. And it starts at 3 and it ends at 6 or 7. Sometimes you could take it to 8. So there, the child masters the other sounds, the previous sounds, and makes a more clearer speech, and also begins to acquire this more difficult sound. It is very important to have in mind that these ages are approximate. So they may vary, but we wanted to offer you sort of a framework. And as a framework, you need to know that, for example, for something to be like considered like a true difficulty, you need to be like 2 years behind, for example. Well, so this is sort of the framework we have in mind, even though your child, you need to be able to observe and follow your child's development. And as I said at the beginning, mainly expand what the child already does at the beginning. And of course, if as I gave you these frameworks, I am saying this, as I said before, for you to be able to manage your expectations and your motivations, to be able to stay motivated, but of course, listen to the therapist your child goes to, and build a team among all the adults that are helping your child develop. Okay, so some games or activities that you can do or find everywhere, materials to do it, are some vocalic games, like, for example, just producing sounds with, for example, at this stage, at the vowel stage, it would be very important also to introduce some rhythms, like turns and other communicational aspects, like making faces when you going to make your production, what faces says it's your turn, so that your child also learns all the communicational aspects throughout the development of, or the interaction and games you're playing with. So vocalic games, some vocal songs, for example, with different intonations of the same vowel, building a surprise box, for example, where you can put different objects that contain different vowels, and you ask the child to choose the object with the vowel you are producing, for example. Mirror games, where you can either be in front of the mirror with your kid, or you play as a mirror to your kid and imitate different facial movements or different sounds or sound combinations, depending on where your child is, and help them focus and practice on the different sound production. Also, making an oral examination, where you can see all the parts that are involved, so that all that knowledge helps you help your child how to develop that specific movement or placement of every part of the mouth. Sound imitation, for example, when it's and you see that some games can be followed throughout all the stages, because, for example, sound imitation or sound combination imitation also can be done with vowels, with consonants, with different stages of consonants as well. Also, you can make the sound hunt, where you can hide pictures, objects, or pictograms of different words, and you say it and they have to find it. Gesture games, where you can make a sound, and you can make like the face, for example, of a sound, and they have to make it, or a combination of sound or a word, depending where your child is. Or matching game, like, for example, if you have the same, for example, the same vowel or the same consonant, which are the same cards that have a drawing or a written word that makes the same sound, and you match them. And of course, this has like And in this, you see many similar activities or games. You can also have like when this is more complex, because at this stage it is expected that children are better at more complex production. You can, for example, with a rhyme game, start a song or a rhyme and freeze at a moment and expect your child to continue until he freezes, and then you continue, and making all those communicational circles go on and on. So as I said, and I'm never going to say it enough, this needs to be very systematic. It needs to be embedded in the family routine, in the school routine, in the therapy routine. We need to realize and enjoy and reward every step and every achievement for what it is, even though we would like it to be further, more at a different speed. We need to, at every step, be happy enough and encouraging enough, because those go hand in hand. As I said before, all the adults involved in the child's life and development need to be together, working together, aligned, because this not also takes development further. It also makes it deeper and generalizes everything that our child is learning. As we talked about, having a very good perspective, not making unjust comparisons. If you have an ASD kit, keep it visual and audiovisual, because that truly helps. We know our kids are visual. And I'm leaving you with this beautiful phrase. It says, they always show us that they are much more capable than we imagine, even if it takes us some time to realize. Thank you very much for being here. It went way longer than I expected. I am sorry. I hope I was clear enough. We are opening now to the Q&A or comments or questions or anything you would need. Thank you very, very much for your patience. I hope it was also fun enough. I don't know. You'll tell me now if I haven't lost you all. Let me see. Oh, no, you're more than at the beginning. So. Hi, Satya. Nice having you here.
You hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
Yeah, I want to check with you one thing.
Yeah.
My son is 10 years old now.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
When he was 2, he spoke some words, some phrases. Now he stopped everything. Is he able to talk again now?
Well, that's a
Uh,
very difficult question. It's very important, but it's very hard. I would say that language has to be somewhere if it was there, and if he's not brain damaged, language must be somewhere. Does he produce anything?
Yeah,
like verbally?
Now also he producing making sounds. Amma, he say mama in Tamil, mama in Tamil language, everything.
Okay.
Randomly he speaks actually. In context, he is not able to speak.
Okay. Yeah. So, as I was saying to another mom before, is he seeing anybody? Because that's the first thing.
Okay, what?
Does he has like a speech and language therapist?
Yeah, he has speech and language therapist, but she is only focusing on communication. So
Yeah. So that's the main thing. She's doing the right thing.
yeah, she is
Yes.
doing the right thing, but I thought my son can speak, at least imitate sounds and all. But he is using his throat to making sound, not mouth to speak.
Yeah, well, he will eventually. It looks like he has no problem with language production, right? Because when he speak, even though it's echolalic, he can do it, right?
Yeah.
So even though it's not direct, because when you have these kind of processes, you need to sort of make like a deviation through communication, because what you want to connect actually is the will or the motivation to communicate internal or activities with language production, because that is what is in the way of his language development, because meaning comes from that jointment between the motivation to communicate and the ability to communicate. It looks like he has the ability, but he has to develop the communicational aspect. In the meantime, for example, I would also encourage the production of language, even though it is not fully meaningful, because if that is something that he likes to do, he enjoys doing. I'm sorry. Elizabeth, no, please, that's your.
Sí.
Okay, I have already done it. Don't worry. I have already done it. That's it. I'm sorry, Satya, but there was so what I was saying is, even though the main focus has to be on communication, I would also encourage language production, even though it sounds or it looks meaningless, because it will, with the communicational aspect, increase the likelihood of having like a language production that is meaningful. What I've seen is that kids tend to start to produce echolalic phrases, for example, and started to use it meaningfully, even though it's not spontaneous production. I don't know if I'm being clear enough.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So that is, in my experience, like a bridge stage.
Okay.
So I wouldn't lose hope.
Yeah. Thank you for the motivation.
Oh, thank you. Okay, wait. Carol says, my son will be 7 years old in November and hasn't yet said any word. He has receptive language and understands instructions. It is too late for my son to start talking. I wouldn't know. I'm sorry, but I can't. But for example, in our study with ASD nonverbal kids, 8 out of 10 kids started talking. So there is a big chance, but there is a very small chance that it could take longer. I don't know. Without seeing a kid, it's really difficult to make such predictions. But I wouldn't lose hope. I wouldn't, because there are other things in the way. As I said, VICON Method was born out of very frustrated professionals trying to find ways to develop language in kids. We found that we had, like, for example, that it took very long to develop some things, some very few words. And when you did it, you made it a week, you came a week later and you've lost it, you gain it again, then you lost it again, and then you know, so mainly Christina, what she created was like a method to bridge between sessions or between stimulation, building bridges that allow that first make an intense and an everyday stimulation. And on the other hand, it also gives some elements of context for the family or the teacher, and also the therapist, but the therapist is the least one that one worries about, to have like a context from which understand or start communicating with your child, which also is the main thing that takes you really further. So as those things could be in the way, Carol, I wouldn't lose hope. He's just 7. So I wouldn't.
Hello. Thank you so much for such an informative talk. I would like to ask something, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
It's regarding my son. So as I just messaged that he's able to communicate his wants and needs with the help of 1 to 2 words, but we are struggling to expand his language from there. Now I'm mindful of it's like a bit off topic today, but I was just thinking if you have any suggestions or anything that we could do to expand his language.
Yeah. So you have 2 quite simple ways of doing that, which are, if he has some interest, you can expand language, encouraging interactions or expanding the vocabulary through that, or also through everyday activities. You can expand the vocabulary, naming or helping him produce the name of things that are around him. So if he is in between the 1 or the 1 and 2 words, that would be the 2 quite simple things. I don't know if this helps or it's too simple. I don't know. In which I don't.
That's a good idea, but the struggle that we are facing is that even though he'll understand or use the vocabulary in like some context, but he won't use it spontaneously. So he be using it with some prompting, or if the situation is exactly the same. For example, he loves his alphabets. So he has a diagnosis of autism and he loves his alphabets and he would like us to draw things which begins with certain alphabets. So he is interested in, and we have been able to expand his language along his interest, but then it's very limited because he will only use that vocabulary when he wants us to draw something and not spontaneously in other situations.
Yeah, well, the difficulty there is not actually the expansion of the vocabulary, but the flexibility.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, so you need to introduce among the same things some differentiation that allows him, that gradually introduces flexibility into the same activity. Or, for example, you can go like with variations, starting with very small variations of things so that he can tolerate those variations, and you gradually start doing it bigger so that he gets used to that kind of things. Or I don't know, if you are maybe introduce some humor things or some things into the or maybe changing context and playing things in different contexts. Some of the things that have to do with generalization, for example, doing the same thing in different places or in different moments with different people, so that he starts gradually. So you can go with generalization of the knowledge that he knows, using that thing in different contexts, or you can also, and you can do that, you can do both, of course, gradually introducing changes among things, or making some humor about what you draw or what he draws, or introducing just some changes, for example, different kinds of apples, and healthy apple on a rotten apple with a worm, or I don't know. I don't know him, so it's quite difficult to give specific
Yeah, but that's a very good idea. Yeah, that's great idea.
Those
Yeah.
are things that I would, because it's not the obstacle there is the flexibility, the inflexibility.
Yeah, yeah.
When you pass that, you'll see it grow.
Hopefully. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thank
So
you.
Anna asked if I think that sign language connects language development in some kids, because it has like a motor, because it has some communication and also some motor act. We all do. The method has sign language embedded in it. Yeah, exactly, as Elizabeth says. We can't rely on gestures only, but for many kids, and especially ASD kids, many times it is the door that allows us to communicate. Also because it is visual. So it's not just like the production, but it is also, you can see it, and they process better what they can see. The problem with speech, the main problem with speech, is that it's invisible and it's linear, so that is one of the main difficulty with ASD kids. So we had like speech, sign language, and pictograms, and we chose sign language because pictograms we find have some, well, it is very well developed in many other sites and all that, so we were not going to do something that's already done, but it has some limitations. And so we chose this path. But yeah, Anna and Elizabeth, you're both right. I think those are the components that allowed like sign language to be like a platform from where speech and language development can move forward. So many interesting questions and comments. This is being
Excuse
great.
me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What do you
No.
say about sign? What do you say about sign language?
Oh,
It's
because our
helpful
videos, they work both with oral language and sign language. Sign
Okay.
language is language
Manhattan signs.
with
We are
words with her hands.
Yeah, we are using Manhattan signs. We are
What?
using Manhattan signs.
Oh, no, I think it's international sign language.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, well, that is a difficulty. We haven't been able to develop an very well established international sign language throughout the world. So
Okay.
it happens like with every language, you know, you have to, like, there is a Spanish sign language, there is an English sign language, there is an international, but it's not really.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but
Yeah, it's okay.
anyhow, and I'm saying this, and I am sorry, but for example, even if it's not your sign language, because kids who are deaf, for example, living in the wild, have developed sign language alone, their own.
Yeah.
So it is the door that gets you into language, even if it's not like a very well established. If it allows your child to communicate, you have to follow that, because that's
Yeah.
what you want. You want him to start going.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
Mainly
Okay.
at the beginning. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we are going to give it, I don't know, some extra minutes. If you... wait, Elizabeth was... If he wants to get something and uses a sign, but in some other moment... what you mean is if in some other moment he uses the word for that, which he previously hasn't used, right? Is that what you mean? How long do you leave him waiting to make the effort to say it? Okay, you have to know that child. That's the first thing. You know how tight you can have the rope. So that's the time. You don't want him, you don't want someone, you want someone to be motivated to learn. You don't want him, you don't want to break someone. You don't want to make him hate some words or something like that. You want to encourage the usage of language, and you can give him choice, for example. But depending on at which stage he is, you have to know what you reward, for example. And if he's doing something sometimes and some other times he does something different, that means that he's moving forward. You don't have to take that as a negative thing. You have to see that he was just using signs. If he starts mixing signs with oral language or sign language, you take that as a step forward, because he's mixing. He's being able sometimes to to use some, and some other times to use the other one. For example, something very interesting at that point, it would be to observe if there is some contextual cue for each thing. Because sometimes, as the mother said before, there are in some places, they are able to do some things, and in some other places, they are not. And that is not like because they are stubborn or they don't want to do it. It's just that they haven't connected that word to that context. That is the most likely thing to have happened. So what you need to do is to make that connection. So that's what I would say. So observe the contextual cues that allow in some moments the oral production, and when he goes for what he knows best, which is the motor communicational system, let's say.